Hi everyone and welcome back. Just answering some questions that we had on the Facebook page. So had one about someone whose husband struggles with cutting down bread. Any tips? And also on that note, are any varieties better than others? So then, let's start with any tips for cutting down. Tricky, because if you're going to have a sandwich, for example, there's not many ways around having a sandwich. So you can try and cut down the quantity, of course. So you could have an open sandwich or fold it over, but of course then you're having less food, in which case you might need to look at other alternatives to bulk out the meal. My usual go-to is things like vegetables and salads, because they're low in carbohydrates, high in fibre, lots of nutrients. So they go a long way to helping with weight management and type 2 diabetes control. But if that's not an option, then you might be able to switch from, say, 2 slices of bread on a sandwich to go to a wrap. So let's assume it's 2 slices of medium bread. That's about 200 calories, whereas 1 wrap is about 150 calories. So you've saved yourself some calories there, and the carbohydrate content is a little lower with the wrap, and you can tend to bulk out the wraps quite nicely. So actually you can get quite a meal out of just 1 wrap compared to a sandwich where your literal quantity is limited. So that might be a quick win. If we're talking about actually just snacking on bread throughout the day, then I think that's a bigger question, and we're looking at actually the behaviours behind the diet, because it's more about snacking behaviour and just grabbing convenience foods. Let's face it, bread is pretty convenient. So actually I'd say it's not so much then about alternatives, it's thinking about the diet as an overall diet on the whole, and actually what are the behaviours behind it, because it sounds like your husband might need to start thinking about actually there's going to have to be a little bit more effort if he wants to improve his diet and not just relying on those easy, quick to grab snacks. However, there are some quick wins, like you can get like chicken pieces that are pretty low calorie, very low carbs. There's no carbs in chicken, so it'd be good for the diabetes perspective. Nuts, fruit, vegetables, those sort of things are going to be much lower carb. You can buy those in pre-prepared packs, so they can be quite convenient, but then it comes down to a matter of taste. Do they like that? How much are they having? We don't want to reduce 1 slice of bread and put in 300 calories of nuts, because then you've actually upped your calorie intake by 200 calories each snack. So it's a fluid thing, and it's hard to answer just off the cuff. You'd really need to sit down and look at the whole diet to get an idea of what's going in throughout the whole day, and then make personalised recommendations. So sorry if that sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but those go-to foods, like I say, the vegetables, the fruits, protein-based foods, they're not going to affect your glucose levels in the same way as starchy foods. So hopefully that's a good starting point. In terms of the types of bread, so yes, absolutely, there are better ones. So in the message, it references sourdough and rye bread, which they get from the Polish shop, and also freezes some portions. And some time ago it was mentioned that freezing slices can make the starch more resistant. So essentially what this is referring to is the glycemic index. Now at the time of filming, my blog is down for maintenance and redevelopment, but once it's back up and running, there is a post all about the glycemic index. But just very quickly, it's concerned with how quickly carbohydrate containing foods get into your body. Quickly released carbohydrate foods like white bread, white pasta, white rice, anything mashed, juiced, and any sugar-based products tend to get in very quickly. So they have more potential to spike your glucose levels, whereas if you choose the lower glycemic index foods, which are more slower releasing, whole grain, whole meal, seeded bread, brown rice, brown pasta, new potatoes, ironically sweet potatoes, vegetables, beans, pulses, lentils, amongst others, they're much more slower releasing, so they have less potential to increase your glucose levels, even if you're having the same amount of carbohydrate at the meal. But from experience, I find this is number 2 on the list. The biggest contributor is the total carbohydrate. So yes, switching from white bread to wholemeal bread or seeded bread will make a difference, but you're still having the same carbs. Okay, so if that doesn't do the trick, you might need to look at alternatives to reducing your carbohydrate intake. In terms of freezing, yes, there is something to that actually. it does tend to bind the starch together and makes it more resistant. A very good example of this, although it's not freezing it, is when you cook pasta. When you spoon it out of the pot, you'll have sort of loose pieces of pasta, and then if you put some of it into the refrigerator for the next day or whenever you're going to eat it, it becomes almost like a blob. So when you take it out the next day, it almost falls out in one ball. And that's because the starch is bound together and makes it much more slower releasing in terms of its carbohydrate intake. So yes, there's definitely something to it. I wouldn't rely on that purely to control your type 2 diabetes, because it's trying to get, it can help, but it's not going to be the difference between high glucose levels and normal glucose levels. A lot more needs to go into it besides that, unfortunately. But it can help. But just choosing those slower releasing carbohydrate foods that I mentioned anyway, that's probably the best thing to do, because then you're getting the slower releasing foods at every meal, rather than relying on cooking some pasta, putting it in the fridge, and then taking it out and forever having to reheat foods to get that effect. So it can be done without having to do that. But yeah, absolutely, there is something to that. So I hope that answered the question. So like I say, if there's anything that's still not clear or you have any further questions, just post a comment in the comment section, and I'll be happy to answer as well as I can. And anyone else that has an answer, please do post. It's a community, it's not all about me. It's about helping you guys the best way that we can. So I wish you a good day, and I'll see you later.